Hello, YouTube. This is VidHead85, and I want to talk about. I actually have two stories here, and they're both revenge tales, but they're not. It's definitely not petty revenge, but it doesn't rise to the level of pro revenge. Petty revenge is like me, when you do something petty and, it kind of resolves a situation. Like, I don't know, basically it's not it's, a lot of times it's passive aggressive. Pro revenge, usually, as far as I believe it to be, is usually something sustained that has a huge fallout. This kind of lies in the middle. So I'm going to tell two stories. The first story involves a tennis racket in gym class. The other involves a history book. So I'm going to start right now. Long before zero tolerance and suspending both parties for fighting because reasons, I went to a school in a predominantly white neighborhood. As a young black man speaking standard American English, I was the living punchline for the joke, "What do you call a black man with a book?" White. The blackness was too much for the white kids, my whiteness was too much for the black kids. I reveled in things like books and intellectual pursuits. I often read history books beyond my grade level and enjoyed classic cartoons. We didn't have cable, and Cartoon Network wouldn't be a thing for a while. And I enjoyed all kinds of different music and opera. Having been alienated from some of my peers and falling in with a crowd of people that were misfits for various reasons, I loved whoever accepted me. It was great looking forward to school with some friends that didn't care how white or black I acted. I was just me. Gym class. Oh boy. I liked and hated gym. One day we used the gymnastics rings hanging from the ceiling, and we did some little games with them. We played dodgeball and we learned all kinds of sports, and things were okay. This particular day, I took a foam tennis ball and hit it against the wall. Now, the gym teacher had him out, so I decided to play tennis against the wall and just enjoy my own company with the added bonus of getting away from the classmates I despised. Speaking of it, there was this one kid named Dipstick. He was an arrogant, self righteous moron. He had brown hair and blue eyes, and to me was as unappealing as a mud rail fence or a ball of phlegm on the floor waiting to be mopped up. The gym teacher, so cue the idiocy of Dipstick and a few others, namely his friend I'll call Snotbag. I remember her government name to this day. I had a crush on her because she reminded me of Major Houlihan from MASH. Yes, I didn't mind watching MASH even though it was usually on past my bedtime. I know that you can feel the nerdiness oozing off the page, ready to invade anyone that gets too close. So Dipstick and his friends decided to harass me while I simply ignored them. I refused to let them get a rise out of me, but that wasn't enough. So they ragged on my clothes, how I was ugly, wore glasses, my shoes were secondhand, and all that nonsense. Then they decided to escalate to get their desired response from me. As I hit the ball, it went to a place I wasn't able to retrieve it before it passed me, and I saw Dipstick grab it. "Give it back, Dipstick!" I roared, taking steps closer to close the distance between he and I. "Come and get it," he said, and bolted away from me. Game on. I was seething and took off after him. I still had my racket in my right hand, and while I didn't know about the slice in tennis terms yet, I had an idea of how I would discover it. I ran until I got close enough to him, took the racket over my left shoulder, and sliced it right in the back of his knee. That bugger face planted and hugged his knees as if he were Smeagol and the knees were his precious. After a few kids came along and told gym teacher that I purposely chucked the racket at him. That was true. As he helped Dipstick off the floor, holding him up as Dipstick limped away. I was sent to the principal's office, and the fact that I was not a troublemaker was definitely an asset to me. I told the AP who was in there at the time that I simply tried to toss the racket aside to get speed and catch him. Something plausible, but not outside of character, and she believed me. I spent the rest of the year at that school until we moved, but Dipstick never bothered me again. Years later, I ran across him on the soccer field in high school, and I smiled at him. He was annoyed. We won that game, and they hated my grunts when I would try to will myself to continue giving my best on the field, even when I was dog tired. So, on top of that big yet one time revenge, I got a little bit of petty revenge as well. So, yeah, that happened, and that was something where I don't know, I just got sick of it. I felt like Carrie for a moment. I just got tired of it, and you know what? They left me alone. I was still that nerdy kid and moved to an area where I had to go to a predominantly black school. I remember the AP being a hard man with an obvious Italian last name, telling us kids to get our hat and coat and get out if we didn't care for our own education. His wife was a librarian at that school. I would go to after school clubs if I were interested, and there was also a free period every other day for in school clubs, and the entire school was junior high. The only thing that really changed is that all of my bullies were black. Same taunts, same nonsense. The only thing, I once ventured to play basketball with in gym with my classmates, and they argued over who took me, nearly getting into a fist fight until the gym teacher made the one with the fewer students take me. I never got the ball or a chance to put up a basket. I told them that they were so shitty for not even giving me the ball. They said they countered and saying they didn't know how I would make a shot. The gym teacher chimed in and said, then you should have passed him the ball to see if he could. He had my back. I appreciated that. One of the popular guys, I'll call him Tree, a dark skinned man that was loved by all the girls. He was always clad in a matching shirt and sweatpants, fancy ones, I might have remembered, um, if I might remember correctly. It was like somewhat like a tracksuit we might see LL Cool J making famous or something. He was always impeccably dressed, muscular, and full of himself. In the locker room, when we would change for swim class, Tree and his friends, including Joker, class clown, and Paco, a follower, made fun of me and my Speedo. I kind of looked like I was almost like, I don't know, overstuffed in it, I guess. They would ask me when I was due and play a game of butt face, running backwards and trying to nail me in the face while I changed. Did I make it clear I didn't like them very much? Well, I dealt with their smack for months, and I was tired of it. I get angry and keep calm, but I kept reaching the end of my rope. It came to a head one day when we had our first period class, and then our second period class teacher was out for the day. We ended up watching a documentary on MLK, and I was watching intently as I felt something hit me. I looked around and see a crumpled up paper hit the ground. The three Dumketeers were at it again. I looked back to see Tree, Joker, and Paco just laughing their butts off. I roll my eyes and turn around. I continue getting more and more thrown at me until I jump up and loudly tell them to stop throwing the paper at me. They feign ignorance for the teacher, and as soon as I sit down, they laugh and throw more. The bell rings, and I'm relieved as we go to our third period class. I'm just done at this point. They try to trick me in the hallways, making fun of me and throwing even more at me in the hallway. I had it. As soon as we get to our classroom, I was ready to blow. I went to a desk at the back of the class because it was closest to the door so I could get seated. And then I see them standing with a grin as if they ate a banana sideways. Paco is on the left, Tree is in the middle, and Joker's on the right. They are ripping paper from a notebook, readying ammo for me. I looked around and saw a history book. It was really thick. After all, it was probably about 900 pages and had an eagle on the front. In fact, it looked a little bit something like this. I believe some were purple and some were red, or maybe they were just blue and red, but this is pretty much what it looked like. Paco, Tree, and Joker were ready to aim, and I said, whoever throw them paper balls at me, I looked around. I'm throwing this. I grabbed the history book and readied my aim. When I was bullied in fourth grade, one of the lunch ladies told me, you know what? They're bothering you? picked up a book and beat the ever loving life out of him with it. It might be frowned upon advice today, but hey, it's still very sound. They threw, and so did I. It was like seeing a banana skin split off and only leave the edible part of the banana itself exposed. Paco and Joker darted off to the left and right, but Tree stayed right in the middle. After throwing that book, it felt like an eternity before it finally landed. People often say how an event looked like it was in slow motion. I knew exactly what they meant that day. The moment after impact, everything got deathly quiet in the room. The adrenaline still coursing my veins. My eyes were locked on Tree and what was to come next. A corner of the book hit his cheek and it seemed to have drawn blood. Panic set in as I saw him take his hand from his cheek and look at me, his eyes aflame with hellfire and all his rage directed at me. I moved to run out of the room as a linebacker of a classmate blocked me, saying, "I want to see a fight." Adrenaline must have not have drained off that much because I pushed him aside easily, and trust me, it was no easy feat. I ran out the hallway into the next classroom. When I turned around, I swore if I was going down, I'd at least swing first. I pivoted and put my hands up. Tree came darting out of the hallway, flanked by Paco and Joker, but Paco and Joker nailed him against the wall, preventing him from coming any closer to me. The teacher was slack jawed when I came out of the room with Tree on my tail a few seconds later. "Come on! I'll kick your butt!" I screamed, readying for a blow that never came. So I'm sent to the principal's office. I told my side of the story, and I had been complaining about him for months to teachers, admins, counselors, any adult figure. They ended up suspending him, and in private, a few of the people said that I had the biggest cojones they'd ever met. So lots of times bullies like to pick on those who don't fight back, but once you do, they do tend to leave you. Once you do fight back, they tend to leave you alone. Now, this was before cyberbullying, when it rose to a new extreme, but it 9 times out of 10 is the general rule. So I want to thank you. These are like I'm telling it. This really kind of is more like a true life thing. I don't know. Again, it's definitely not petty revenge. It's definitely not pro revenge, but it's just straight up revenge. And it sometimes there are some people that I still talk about. I talk about the second event with because I know someone from that class from junior high that I talk to constantly. But that first story, I don't know who else knows about it other than like my classmates then because I really haven't told that story too much. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you have. Please rate, comment, subscribe. Are there any stories like that you have where you stood up to a bully and they finally left you alone? All right. Talk to you soon. Enjoy.